Hello, everybody. So I'm a little bit late. It happens. Sometimes I'm getting ready and I get like a last minute idea of something I want to talk about. Ooh, it looks like Facebook isn't letting me go live on one of them. Oh, well. Anyway, I'm John Arvosis here in DC. Hello, everybody. Let me go live on TikTok as well. And, well, the one on my Facebooks isn't going live, but we'll see. All right, give me a second here for the, Tyson Ann, it was 4 minutes. I think you can handle it. Hello, everybody on TikTok. Pale Rose, you're the first person on TikTok to join us. Good to see you. I am late, but never there. Never there. Hello, TikTok. Hello, YouTube. As my professor in France said to me once, Monsieur Arvosis, vous n'êtes pas toujours là, mais vous êtes toujours là. Thank you, Melody, which was a great saying. He basically said, Mr. Arvosis, you're not always there, but you're always there. He kind of, in his case, he meant I was a sarcastic little biatch. Anyway, hello, everybody. Woo! Give folks a little hello from where you're from, if you would. And yeah, we'll go. I'm not going to drag this one out. We'll go maybe 2 or 3 minutes just to have folks saunter in. Thank you already, Baby Shoe, for my my Ukrainian. I call that my Ukrainian spring headdress. Watching the dog here. Oh, it's time to come in. All right. Come on in, dog. Come back in. Come on. And it's beautiful weather outside, which means every 10 minutes or so, my dog is going to want to come in and out and in and out and in and out. So, oh, well. Anyway, hey, everybody. As I said, give folks a little shout out where you're from, if you would. And then we'll get the dog rolling. We'll get the dog and pony show rolling. There's a lot of good news today, actually, which is really interesting, which I did not expect. And just since last night, actually, or since yesterday, excuse me, allergies. But a lot of good news on the Ukraine front, which I was very surprised. So happy to share. All right, another minute or two, and then we'll start. Like I said, just to give folks a chance to get in. Howdy, Ruth. So what else is going on? UK. I know I could use a dog door. I don't have one, but I could use one, but I don't. All right, 30 seconds and we'll start, guys. Not expecting a huge TikTok crowd today, but you never know. You never knew. Kumar, good to see you. There is good news today. Annette, good to see you. There's a lot of good news today, I would say. Surprisingly, just the analysis of how things are going in the East and everything else. So, which kind of backs up what I was suspecting. All right, guys, I'm going to start here. We do need some Sasha merchandise. Maybe Syndicate can help me with that. He is my technical font of all wisdom. So what we're going to do, which we always do, is I'm going to start the show with maybe 20 minutes or so of news, tell you why it matters. And as I said, there's a lot of good news today, actually. And then we will shift over to question and answers. As I'm doing this, I'm going to turn my fan on so my apartment doesn't swelter because Washington, D.C. is finally heading into nice summer weather. The Q&A afterwards on TikTok, use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Hello, France, Eric. Use the Q&A button, question and answer at the bottom of your TikTok screen. Enter your questions there, and that way it makes it much easier for me to get to them later because they're all stacked up. On YouTube, you know the drill, and Facebook and LinkedIn, use the comment box at the bottom, and you can put your comments there. And anybody who does super chat comments, which I appreciate because you help keep this podcast. I don't know what we call this, broadcast. I needed a name for this show. I think somebody had said the Sasha News Network after my dog, which isn't a bad one. But in any case, you help me out by doing the super chat question, so I appreciate that. You do that via the $ at the bottom of the screen, and we'll go from there. And you guys on TikTok, whenever you do the funky little hats and everything else, I very much appreciate it, and you're also supporting my work, and I will try to give a shout out when that happens. So thank you for all of that. All right, guys, let's dig in. This is a really surprisingly good news day, and I'm surprised for a Sunday. Thank you, Jessica. I'm surprised for a Sunday as well because I kind of feel often the weekends aren't going to be newsy. But let me give you the quick roundup of the news, and then I'm going to dive right in. But as I said, really good news in Eastern Ukraine, I think, and I'll tell you why. So we're going to first talk about Severodonetsk, which is the big town in eastern Ukraine that the Russians are trying to get, and they may even get. But I'm going to tell you why things are not so good for the Russians there. The Russian occupation of southern Ukraine not going so well. That's good news too. France is kind of being bad again, and everybody knows I love France. I speak French. I studied in France. I lived in France. I adore France. France not being so good. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to get into the question of, does land for peace even work in the context of Ukraine? Is it selfish of Zelensky to not even go ahead and cede land to Europe? To Europe. That's kind of what it is, to cede land to Russia. The Russians have seized 2 Turkish fishing boats. Thank you for that postcard. Wait, who is this with the postcards here? Well, I don't mean to knock France entirely. I mean, don't totally knock France. I think France is a great country. I do. I love France. I consider it my second home, Paris. But they're not being so good on this stuff right now. The Russians seized 2 Turkish fishing boats, which I thought was incredibly stupid. Poland is sending more weapons. Little bit of news about the Germans not behaving very well. But again, this is from the German press, so don't get mad at me. This is from Die Welt. The Russians may be playing a little game with Syria. And the British tabloids think Putin is dead, and it's actually very funny. I mean, not that he's dead, but the whole thing is kind of funny with what they've come up with. And for the YouTube folks, you may have noticed that I've been like slipping in some jokes and things like that in the Autobot, but it sends them out in multiple subjects. So be aware. Sound check. Seem to be glitchy. I'm glitchy. Uh-oh. Can you hear me? Let me check my, don't scare me on this, Syndicate. All right, guys, stuttering. Interesting. Hang on a second. Let me check my audio. All right, guys, 1 second. People are saying the sound is not good. On TikTok, the sound is good. On YouTube, the sound is being stuttery, which is a little weird. I'm looking to see that I have nothing else on here. Hang on, guys. You know what? Let me, 1 second. Just going to make sure I close any other little, okay. I have a YouTube open. There shouldn't be anything else that takes power from the internet. Yikes. All right, guys. The sound is bad. I'm not sure what to do about this. Hang on, TikTok. I apologize for this, but the sound apparently is being really bad on YouTube today, and I'm not sure what to do about that. I can switch to my Wi-Fi, which shouldn't be. Actually, you know what? 1 second, guys. Sorry. All right, I'm going down to a lower definition. Let's see if that helps at all. My mic cable. Hang on, guys. I apologize. Everything is being very evil today on my laptop. For the boom, 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 plugged in. My microphone is plugged in. Worst comes to worst, I could unplug my mic. It's better now? Okay. All right. Let me keep going, guys. I don't want to piss off all the TikTok people. Thank you for hanging in there, TikTok people. Exactly. The TikTok found is okay, and that's what matters. All right, guys. Let me jump right in. So this is very interesting. Okay, so Severodonetsk is a big town, important town in eastern Ukraine. It is the easternmost point that the Ukrainians still control. And by the way, remember, I go back and forth here because TikTok, I've got you on my iPad, and YouTube, etc., I've got you on my computer, so that's why you'll see me going back and forth. I don't have like a weird neck twitch. So Severodonetsk, the Russians have been putting a lot of manpower and a lot of weaponry into taking this town. What is interesting is the Institute for the Study of War, which is a very well-respected military think tank, says that they think this is a huge mistake because what the Russians are doing is they're putting too much effort into taking this town and they're not going to get enough benefit out of it. And they say that afterwards, if the Russians are even able to get this town, and it's not clear they're going to be able to get it, by the way, but if they're able to get it, all right, hold on, guys. You're driving me crazy. Okay, so the sound is still bad. You know what? I can restart the stream, but it's going to kick it. There's no way to restart the screen. It's going to end the broadcast. All right, guys. You know what? Sorry, guys, on TikTok. Don't leave me, TikTok. All right, I'm going to restart the stream again. I'm going to have to start it fresh. Let me tick. You guys are okay on TikTok. Just hang there a second. It's on YouTube over on my laptop that's being bad. I'm going to restart the stream, which means an entirely new an entirely new URL. So check my YouTube homepage and my Facebook, etc., for the new page. All right, I'm sending them all a message, letting them know I'm starting again. Thank you, TikTok. I appreciate that. And I always hate doing that. I mean, I guess we're all used to these kind of glitches, but it's funny. I'm always like looking at TikTok at the numbers at the top to see how many people are there, and I get fixated on whether it goes up and down. All right. All right. I'm going to, first of all, let me try to refresh the page, but I think rejoin. Okay. All right. It does let me rejoin the same page, YouTubers. Is the sound any better? I simply just exited and rejoined, but did you all get booted? All right, let me know, guys. I mean, if it's good enough, like I said, I don't want to scare off everybody else here, but is it good enough? Everybody that's on, we're still here. Sound seems better. Okay, yeah, very weird. I don't know what's going on. What's really weird too is that it's being okay on the iPad. Except I did ratchet down the sound a degree, so now we're at 720p. And if I have to, I can go to standard. I hate to go to standard, but I certainly can if I have to. Okay. All right, guys. Sorry. Let's keep going then. All right. So the issue is that the Russians are putting so much military and so many vehicles. Thank you, Poppy. I needed that after all the technical glitches. I appreciate it. Are putting so much effort into taking the town of Severodonetsk that the Institute for the Study of War says it's not worth it. Now, let me go through some of the details here of what's going on. This was an interesting analysis by Phillips OBrien, who is an English defense expert. I believe he may be in Scotland right now at a university there. Very smart guy I follow on Twitter. And his analysis this morning is this. He says you've actually had fewer Russian losses in the last week in terms of soldiers, in terms of vehicles being destroyed, etc. He says either the Ukrainian military is on the verge of collapse and they've just stopped killing Russians, basically, or the Russians aren't able to field as many soldiers and vehicles as they were before. And he says he believes it's the latter, meaning you're starting to see casualty numbers drop because the Russians can't fight as much as they did before, right? Yeah, whatever. Sorry. I just read a comment. As I've said before, stop trusting people broadcasting from Russia, okay? I'm going to stop with that now. Every honest person in Russia who broadcasts is gone. They're in jail or they've left the country. Stop listening to people broadcasting from Russia. They're lying to you. I will let it go with that. So to continue, there's the significant decrease in combat intensity. He thinks the Russians are running out of frontline vehicles, that they literally don't have enough vehicles to fight the battles, and that's why they're not fighting them. He gives an example. The great breakthrough at Popasna. Popasna is a town in the east. The Russians took it a week, maybe, I'm trying to think if it was a week. In the last week or two, the Russians took it. It was a big deal, okay? He says, after that big breakthrough of taking over the town, the Russians have moved only 10 to 15 kilometers since taking over that town. Now, the especially important part is most of it was in the first few days right after they took the town. Then they stalled. 10 to 15 kilometers, again, I'm going to guess we're talking 6 miles, 7 miles to 12 miles. And they moved it in the first couple of days. More importantly, it appears that here we go. He says that it appears that the Russians, thank you for the crown, by the way. It appears the Russians are trying to take the town of Severodonetsk with a direct frontal assault now. Now, initially, hello from Donetsk. Oh, wow. Seriously? Wow. Okay. We believe you. Don't spam us, though. We believe you. Don't spam. But good to see you. I hope you're a good Ukrainian from Donetsk. I suspect you are. Thank you for joining us. That's okay. We'll give him a little leeway. He's just weighing in from Ukraine there. He may have not been sure if it was getting through. What's happening now is the Russians were planning on surrounding this town. I know, guys, be nice. Come on. He's a Ukrainian checking in from Eastern Ukraine. His connection could be bad for all we know. Give him a break or her a break. If you were under like 2 months of bombardment, you might be sending a few tweets as well or messages as well. So Anyway, the point was the Russians were going to surround this town of Severodonetsk. Now they've given up on surrounding it. Now they are going in and attacking straight on. Now, why is this a problem? Well, first of all, it's a problem because it's a much better strategy to surround the town and have a siege. You cut off all food, all utilities, everything coming into the town. You cut off the weapon supplies coming into the town so that you basically start, it's attrition. You start to cut back on the ability of people in the town and the troops in the town to fight back. It is much smarter than going in just directly. Now, what they're doing is, it is believed, and O'Brien thinks this, they're attacking directly because they don't have a choice. The fear is, maybe not the fear, the hope is that the Russians have realized they don't have enough vehicles to surround this town. And because of it, their only option left is to attack head on, even though they're not really ready to attack. They haven't made the town, softened the town up enough. That to him is a signal that the Russians are running out of their vehicle power at going in. Now, again, what this means is that the Russians ain't doing so well, that they may, and mind you, the Institute for the Study of War says it's not even clear if the Russians are going to take Severodonetsk. So that's not a given. The last couple of days, the Russians were getting closer. They've been fighting in the streets. The Russians captured a hotel. I mean, they're literally going building by building. It's not even clear the Russians are going to get the town. But the Russians are trying to get the town with a direct attack, which is idiotic, and it shows that there's a bit of a level, I don't want to call it panic, but things aren't going well for them. That's great news. Now, let me move on to the Russian occupation of southern Ukraine. Also not going well. I told you this was going to be kind of a happy day. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody did put up a question. This was going to be sort of a happy day of content, mostly. Oh, thank you, Syndicate. So what? You'd have to buy that, but thank you. Syndicate's buying questions just to help me out. I appreciate that. That was nice of you. So in the south, we know that Russia wants eastern Ukraine, right? They already stole southern Ukraine. Oops, put this here. Southern Ukraine, which is Crimea, the peninsula going into the Black Sea. And they wanted a land bridge between the two, and that land bridge, that connection between the two includes the town of Mariupol that we've talked about so much. Well, put aside for a minute that we know the Russians wanted all of Ukraine, but they've had to fall back to trying to get this, okay? Well, included in that southern region, sort of north of Crimea, a little bit west, a little bit east, are two regions and towns called Kherson and Zaporizhia. Zaporizhia is the region where that nuclear plant is that the Russians took over. Kherson is the first major city that fell to the Russians, right? But it's also the name of the region is Kherson, the name of the region Zaporizhia, the oblast, as they call it. What the Russians are finding is they have been able to occupy those regions, but they haven't been able to control them. And what the difference means is it is one thing to have troops there and to basically beat the Ukrainians for now, that the Ukrainians are not able to sort of come back in and occupy it, so to speak. But the Russians haven't been able to secure the regions. They still have partisans, which are basically guerrillas, citizens who take up arms, and they secretly are working with Ukrainian intelligence. Think of World War II. The French resistance, like people working quietly and secretly to help. That's what you got going on now. The Russians have still not been able to quell dissent in these two regions. One mayor, I talked to you guys about this last week. One mayor, collaborator is what I mean. Collaborator mayor returns home in the last week, and his front door basically blows up, which was great. I mean, he survived, but not good news for this guy. The other guy, another mayor now, has security because he's afraid of it happening to him. Thank you, the crown for the hat. I appreciate that. I'll find this real quick. Oh, yeah. The other stuff I was going to say is, so you've got to grab the territory. You've got to secure the territory, make it safe, get rid of all the partisans, etc. Thank you, Heidi, for that. You then have to keep the territory, which means you've got to defend it against Ukrainians attacking. So everywhere they've grabbed territory, the Russians have to leave troops there to do all of these things, to secure it, to hold it, and to run it. And this was a really interesting point. These same troops have to figure out how to run the regions. And they've got to get surrogates and collaborators, but they've got to keep an eye on the collaborators so that they don't basically, break free. Thank you, Luda, for the glasses. Every time they do that, it's taking men away from the battle with the Ukrainians. Or in Russian cases, men. In the Ukrainian cases, men and women. But in the Russian cases, you don't have men that are fighting on the front because they're busy securing, keeping, administering all these regions. That's a big deal. And then the final problem for Russia in the south is that the Ukrainians have declared that they are mounting a counteroffensive to reclaim territory around the southern port city of Kherson. We're going to find out more about this in the coming days. I just heard about this yesterday. We don't have the details, but that's interesting. I will say this, at least from the stuff I've seen coming from the Ukrainians, some people feel like, the Ukrainians may or may not be telling the truth. Mostly when we've heard about the Ukrainians fighting back like this, it's been real. So all of this, bad news for the Russians. Now, sip of water, and then we've got a little French update. Now, I saw a tweet this morning from the former French ambassador to the U.S., and I've got to say, a little annoying because I'm trying to read his tweet, and I realized he blocked me on Twitter. Thank you, Tasha. And I like this guy. I mean, I followed him on Twitter. I used to write things to him. I like him. I mean, I don't know what's going on. So a little annoyed that the guy blocks me, whatever. And I go and look at his tweet. And his tweet is responding to Ambassador McFaul, who is the former U.S. ambassador to Russia. And he responds to McFaul and he says, when you lose a war, you lose. Thank you, Cap. You give up territory because you have no choice and consider that prolonging the war would only worsen the situation. It is not a strategy, but a sad obligation. He's suggesting that Ukraine should give up land because it's lost the war. And mind you, Ukraine hasn't lost the war. I mean, this is insane. The analysis I'm giving you isn't like some Pollyanna, I'm trying to trick you analysis. If I'm trying to trick you, I'm going to look really bad in a week or two when Ukraine loses, right? So that's not what's going on. They haven't lost yet, and the Russians have been in trouble, and the Russians are in growing trouble. Thank you, Fleabaggy. What really bothers me about this, though, what really bothers me is the second half. You give up and consider that prolonging the war would only worsen the situation. That is a Putin talking point. That is a Kremlin talking point. Remember the whole issue with the phone calls that France and Germany had with Putin? I think it was yesterday. And Putin said to them again, well, it was either yesterday or a couple days before where Putin was talking about the grain and the fact that he's embargoing Ukraine's grain and it could cause starvation in North Africa and the Middle East. And Putin said, well, that's your fault because you're prolonging the war. Thank you, Run4 and Shauna, both of you. He said, if you weren't prolonging the war, we could save all these people, but it's your fault they're all dying. It's literally a Kremlin talking point. Now, he's no longer the ambassador, but he's a long-term French diplomat and a very important one if he had the post of ambassador to the United States. He's not a nobody. And as I said, it's not just, okay, and the final point, not just the Kremlin talking point. And I'm going to read this to you again. You give up territory. First of all, when you lose, you lose. Yeah, they didn't lose. You give up territory because you have no choice and consider, thank you, baby, consider that prolonging the war would only worsen the situation. In other words, all of us who are prolonging the war by continuing to support Ukraine, by continuing to not give up land, are responsible for the deaths that are happening in Ukraine, for the hardship that's happening in Ukraine. It's our fault. That's a freaking Putin talking point. Really bothers me. This really bothers me. Now, what worries me is because he's a longtime French diplomat and because he is a very well-known, I would say esteemed French diplomat because he was the ambassador to the United States, to Washington, I worry that this isn't happening in a vacuum, that he isn't just saying this on his own, that he is reiterating what the French leadership is telling him to reiterate or to iterate. And that scares me because it suggests that there is a larger push by France now to once again be the peacemaker. I'm not even sure how to I was going to say to hell with Ukraine, but maybe they just believe, and thank you, Music Girl and Nicola for that. They believe that Ukraine has lost this war and Ukraine needs to give up. Anyway, very annoying. The final point I was going to make on this was, putting aside for a minute whether they're even right about them losing the war. One, I question whether we have the moral authority to tell Ukraine to give up. But, in international relations, moral authority will buy you a cup of coffee and that's about it. You know what I mean? I mean, as governments, we do have to decide, do we or don't we continue to support Ukraine? Fair enough. Does land for peace in this context even work? Does giving Russia more land in Ukraine, maybe we give them eastern Ukraine as part of Russia, maybe we give them that whole strip, including Kherson and Zaporizhia, does it even work to guarantee peace? In the short term, it does. I mean, in the short term, sure. Russia will withdraw its troops. We'd have international trade again with Russia. We'd lift all the sanctions, right? I mean, everybody would be happy, except, of course, the Ukrainians who now live under Russian rule and the Ukrainians who just lost a third of their country. But sure, the world would go back to peace again, if you want to call it that. And then what happens? We've sent a message to bad guys around the world that genocide works. If you go in and you kill enough people, if you go in and you cause enough pain, then people around the world, the main powers will say, it's not worth it because you're prolonging the war and you're hurting people, right? Second of all, what happens with Russia? Russia gets the message, Putin gets the message that genocide works. Same problem. But a bigger problem regarding Putin, because here's the thing. Putin didn't want Eastern Russia or Eastern Ukraine. He didn't want that strip of land. I mean, he did, but that's not what his goal was. Remember, his goal was Kyiv, the capital. He wanted all of Ukraine. That was Putin's goal. Why wouldn't Putin come back in 5 years and get the rest of Ukraine? Once they build up all their weapons, they've learned now which weapons they need and which weapons they don't need, right? They need a better ability to go after the drones and things like this. Why wouldn't Putin just come again in 5 years and do it again, and we're all back in the same war? Anyway, very annoying to me. Another little story here, which, again, I put almost in the good news category, and I'm almost done. There's a few more stories. As I told you, there's a lot of news today, but it's relatively good. The France thing bothers me. But the Russians, thank you, Fleabaggy, the Russians have seized 2 Turkish fishing boats, 12 crewmen total. They fined the fishermen $30,000, and they took all their fish. And to me, that's the interesting part of this story, that the Russians took all of their fish, because it makes me wonder whether this was all about the Russians taking the fish and whether this was about, frankly, Russian troops starving. Now, I don't know whether 2 fishing boats has enough fish to help feed the Russian troops, but exactly. Raggedy Android saying they hungry. It is making me awfully suspicious. Also, this is great news because it's going to piss off Turkey. And as far as I'm concerned, right, Turkey, member of NATO, member of the EU, not EU yet, but member of NATO, being kind of difficult, right? Turkey's being difficult about the whole Sweden and Finland thing. This is great because it's going to piss Turkey off more. And Turkey, that's been also trying to, I would say they've been trying to do the same strategic balance that France and Germany have been doing, but way more successfully in terms of not really appeasing Russia. It's going to make Turkey less likely, perhaps, to kowtow to Russia, or at least to nod to Russia in the future. Poland is sending 18 KRAB, self-propelled howitzers to Ukraine. These howitzers can be used by 3 artillery squadrons and can fire up to 40 kilometers 6 times a minute. Poland is the second largest donor of equipment to Ukraine after the U.S. so far, according to this. Although Estonia, the last time I checked, Estonia was the largest donor by it was per GDP. It wasn't per person, but it was per GDP. So in other words, based on the size of their economy, Estonia has been the biggest donor, but otherwise it's the US and Poland, which is pretty cool. Die Welt. I'm going to mention this, and this is not German bashing. I know some of the Germans get upset, but folks, this is in your big paper, not mine. Die Welt is one of the big German publications for years. Die Welt says there's a big story out that despite promises, the German government hasn't delivered nearly any weapons to Ukraine over the past 9 weeks. And that they've said they were going to deliver a lot of things and they haven't come through. They've slowed things down. It's bad. And again, I don't know what's going on. We talked about Germany enough here, but there's some weird back and forth with Germany, good Germany, bad Germany. I don't know. Oh, and my speed, I apologize. My speed is because, and my sister caught it the other day, I had to take my asthma inhaler before I started, and these little things send you to the moon and you don't even realize it. Absolutely like, woo! So it's not coffee, it's my albuterol, as we call it. I forget, what do you call it? I learned what you call this in France because I had to declare it at the French embassy once when I was going. It's not Seretide. No, Seretide was my Advair. Anyway, but yes, so I'm flying today because of that. I'll try to slow down. It's hard. There is a report that Russia may be planning to cut off food and the puffer. Russia may be planning to cut off food and water to Syria. Mind you, this is Ventolin. That's it. Yep. They're providing food and water. Not they. The world is providing food and water up to 1 million Syrians, but the Russians control access. And the Russians, according to reports, may be, thank you, Mad Nugs, for that, the Russians may be considering pulling support and cutting off the food and water for these 1 million Syrians in order to use this as leverage to get something out of NATO for the sanctions or something else. Just, unbelievable. Lori Keene, when Putin spoke with France and Germany, do you think he's honest and admits what he's doing to them? Or does he give them the same BS story he gives us and the Russian people? Oh, he gives them the same story. Of course he does. Of course he does. Well, first of all, he can't admit it because the phone calls are being recorded. So if Putin says, I'm lying, blah, 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 right, he wouldn't do it. So no, he's not telling the truth. He's giving the same line to them. He could give a different line in terms of trying to spin them or something else, but Putin isn't saying anything that he would be afraid of being broadcast publicly because he knows they're recording it. So yeah, I don't think so. The British tabloids. Okay, this I have to show you because this kind of made me chuckle, and this will be my last story on here. So the British tabloids are all over this story where they think that Putin is dead and that there's actually a series of body doubles that are being, I'll show you. This is from The Sun. Vladimir Putin may be dead with body double taking his place. MI6 bosses claim. The Sun. Tyrants fall. Paranoid and sick Vladimir Putin may already be using body doubles and pre-recorded appearances to hide poor health. The Express. Vladimir Putin could already be dead with body double taking his place. And The Mirror. Vladimir Putin may already be dead with body double taking his place. So we don't know. I doubt he's dead. I wouldn't be surprised he's got a body double because the guy is paranoid. But, there's that. What was the last little... Oh, I think this is the new Polish howitzers, the self-propelled ones. Pretty sure. I saw an additional thing as to why they matter. So the new self-propelled artillery guns that the Poles are providing. Listen to this. They fire 3 miles farther than the most common artillery system. Thank you, Court Watch, for that. They fire 3 miles farther than the most common artillery system used by the Russian army, and that's good because, as I've explained before, if Ukraine's artillery, thank you, Kreiders, goes farther than Russia's artillery, Ukraine can hit Russia, but when Russia fires back, it's 3 miles short. So otherwise, they'd be hitting each other. This way, it's like being able to throw a ball at somebody and you keep hitting the guy, but he can't throw the ball as far at you, so he can never hit you. Or shooting a gun, same concept, right? So that's the first thing. So it shoots 3 miles farther and 10 miles farther if shooting a precision GPS-guided projectile. Now, I didn't even realize these things existed, but I was reading about it the other day because the Canadians have some of these, and they've got literally GPS-guided projectiles that go farther, 10 miles farther, but also, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong on this, Mad Nugs, thank you, but I read that you can guide them after they've been shot. You can actually change the direction to a degree. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that kind of blew me away when I read it. Am I right about this? Sorry, you military experts out there. And if true, it's very cool. Anyway, this is why these weapons are so cool. You know what? But this is no, but these are new now coming from Poland. But this is new news from Poland, what they're sending over. So that's good. All right, guys, that's it for the news. Let me jump to the questions and answers and all of that stuff. And we will go right in. So, sorry, Rita is saying she's heard that the Ukrainian Minister of War is saying Putin does have terminal cancer, but could live for a few more years. See, that's the thing. I wouldn't be surprised about that. See, that's amazing. Okay, Yulia, I don't mind having you on. I just don't want to get into a half-hour discussion. Let me, here. Hold on. Oop, did I declined you instead of accepted you. I thought I accepted you. You can come back, Julia. I don't mind. I just don't want to get into a half-hour discussion on stuff. I want to get into the Q&A. But I declined it by accident. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's the thing. He could be sick, but as we discussed before, having cancer isn't necessarily a death sentence. And even being sick with cancer doesn't mean you don't live for 5 years, you know? So yeah, okay, here we go. So Julien is saying the flight arc of the GPS shells can be modified after being fired. That's what I thought. I mean, just amazing. Right. It's not like it goes here and it can do a 90-degree turn, but that you can, you know, change the direction to some degree or change the target is amazing. What else we got? Otherwise, I'm going to jump to the Raggedy Android is saying Russia is supposedly ready to start peace talks right now. And that's true. Russia has been talking about, oh, we want peace. Russia is currently saying there are cracks in the Western resolve because of France and Germany, and they think they can take everything. Honestly, I think the France and Germany story is not good for Ukraine. You've also had the issue with Italy, where Italy as well has been putting out this peace proposal that, you know, is kind of, it basically is requiring lots of things from Ukraine and not requiring anything from Russia. So if I were Russia right now, yes, that would be my take. I would think, you know, we're doing well. All right, guys, I'm jumping into the TikTok Q&A. As I said, it's at the bottom of the screen. I haven't seen anything about the Royal Navy going to the Black Sea. Not sure what that's about. Putin's health, we just talked about. Nobody knows, but a lot of people do think he probably is sick. The question is, you can be sick for a long time and not die and not leave office. What countries are Ukraine's real best friends now? That's interesting. I would say Poland seems pretty clear, right? Poland's pretty clear at this point. Poland has really just bent over backwards for Ukraine. And especially with the refugees, I forget if the number was 3 million refugees or something. I mean, amazing. Most of if they do, they have very few camps set up, refugee camps. Most of the refugees are staying in Polish homes. People that just welcome them in. So Poland, number one. I think I would put Great Britain potentially number two. And in terms of resolve, this is kind of tough though, because, okay, you've also got the Baltic states. The 3 Baltic states, amazing, unquestioning support for Ukraine, right? So you've got them. The U.S. is in an interesting position because we have provided so much to Ukraine in terms of money and weapons. And I will argue that Biden, in spite of some of my criticism of him occasionally waffling, I think, especially at the beginning, Biden pulled everything together. Biden made this work. He pulled Europe together. I mean, NATO together. I think the U.S. coordinated all of this in a very good way. And he gets a major credit for the effort and also for what we've provided. So I maybe don't want to rank them, other than maybe, I don't want to necessarily rank them, but I would put those, the U.S. and Britain and Baltic states and Poland. But again, I may be missing something because there may be some of the smaller countries who are there for Ukraine but haven't provided as much, but still are best friends. Tell me if I'm missing anybody obvious, but and again, that doesn't mean that France and Germany haven't helped a lot. They have. Canada has obviously been great too, so I don't mean to drop Canada. You know, there's a lot of other countries there too. Oops, sorry, PB&J. Can the EU, US, and UK keep helping Ukraine successfully without France, Germany, and Italy? Yes and no. We can keep, well, here's the problem. We can help them with our weapons. We'd have to be careful because any weapons that are in those countries would have to first agree. And then any weapons in other countries made with parts from those countries, they would also have to agree, right? And we had this problem at the beginning, remember? Not problem, but situation at the beginning where weapons that were made in Germany, and I forget who had them. Was it in the end? It was like the Swedes and then private business in Czech Republic or something like that. And that the Germans had to sign off because they were German made. So you could run into a situation where not having those additional countries on board anymore, they would then be able to veto weapons going over. 2, they're still members of the EU. So you worry about losing them, whether the EU starts to lose them too in terms of sanctions. That would be my big fear. And, NATO is so integrated militarily that I'm not sure what else might happen that might be bad if you were to lose a few key NATO countries, Hang on here. I'm watching my Russian jokes pop up. I've scheduled a few new Russian jokes or Soviet jokes on my YouTube that pop up here. My Soviet dad jokes, as I'll call them. Let me get, excuse me, another Q&A question here on TikTok. The Turkish fish taking certainly could lead to something bigger. Yes. I mean, the Turkish fleet could say, thank you, Joanne, I appreciate that. The Turkish fleet could simply, they could start sending out their own boats, and the Turks sending out their own military and saying, you know what? Next time you do it, we're going to shoot you. Okay, I have to read you really quick because there's a joke that I put on YouTube and somebody already didn't get the punchline, but I left the punchline off because the punchline was overkill. It was too obvious. Not obvious. It makes it a harder joke without the punchline. But let me read you the joke and see if anybody gets it, okay? Stalin appears to Putin in a dream. Putin asks him, Stalin, what am I to do? The world hates us, our economy is a wreck, and the glorious Russian army can't even defeat a few Ukrainians. Please help me. Very well, Stalin says. You must do 2 things and do exactly what I tell you. Yes, Putin says. Tell me. Okay, Stalin says. First, you must execute the entire government and kill everybody in Ukraine, and then paint the walls of the Kremlin blue. And Putin says, why blue? Get it or not? Again, I left the punchline off because I thought the punchline ruined the joke. All right, I'm going to tell you. The idea is that the part of the plan that Putin didn't understand and had a problem with was the color of the Kremlin. That's the problem he had. He didn't have a problem with killing all the Ukrainians and killing everybody in his government. His problem was the color. So that's the dad joke of the day. Anyway, but again, it's sort of the initial line was something like, that's the part you had a problem with was the color, but I thought that was almost explaining the joke, which I didn't like it. But all right, I thought it was funny. That it also makes it funnier to then explain it a little bit because it's like, why blue? All right, and now off from our regularly scheduled dad jokes, back to another TikTok question. Sure, Royal Navy to escort. Well, that's the question. I mean, Waffler, I'm going to call you. Waffler asks, what about using the Royal Navy to go in and escort the Ukrainian grain ships? Now, that is certainly a possibility. Lithuania had proposed pretty much something like that, getting together some kind of a naval, task force or naval force together. Not NATO per se, but it could be NATO countries. So the UK, for example, said they were interested, or once they looked at it more, but they were interested, and using these military ships to escort the civilian vessels full of grain. And you could even reflag the Ukrainian grain vessels as being from these countries themselves. Okay? Now, Admiral Stavridis, who is a former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, wrote about this in Bloomberg yesterday, and he compared it to something the U.S. did, and it may have been beyond the U.S., but the U.S. did when Iran was threatening oil going through the Persian Gulf. And basically, okay. Oh, okay. Oh, that's funny. Sorry. I'm laughing at the Streamlabs thing. That the U.S. went in and we reflagged the tankers and defended them as American ships. So the same thing could happen here, and it's risky. Yeah, it's risky. You could get into a shooting battle, but it's at some point, are we just going to let Putin starve the world? Is that what's happening? And this gets into that whole issue, which folks have risen. Folks have raised before. Is it because is it because Putin would be starving people in North Africa and the Middle East that we wouldn't consider it an act of war? But if he were starving Europeans, we would. Or if he were starving Canadians, would that be enough? But not Syrians? Well, we already know Syrians don't count enough, right? I mean, in terms of this analysis by the West and others. So, it's... Hold on, I'm saying. Syndicate's putting another joke. I told Putin that I had an interesting dream. I saw Moscow full of light, joy, dancing, and laughter, with people driving luxury cars just like it was before the sanctions. There were neon lights and billboards all over the city. Putin asks, and what did these billboards say? And the guy says, but how the hell would I know? I don't speak Ukrainian. Yeah. So the point is Ukraine wins the war. Very cute. Ha, 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 ha. Very cute. Another dad joke. All right. Let's do another question here. Zero Suit Namo asks, do you think Ukraine will get back all the lost land? I don't know. Oh, sorry. Okay. Yulia's back again. Sorry, Yulia. All right. Let me there. Oop, wait, I got to get my mic off. Hang on. There we go. Sorry about that. Hey.
Don't worry.
What's up?
Don't worry. I am here with really good news.
Oh, good.
So, remember when we were discussing the life with the Ukrainian historian?
Yes.
So I had a 2-hour conversation with her today, and we have determined that it's going to be, which is a very generous sacrifice of time on her behalf, but we're going to do 5 Saturdays in a row.
5? Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah. And we're going to do an hour each Saturday on a different topic and deep dive. And
right.
So this Saturday, unfortunately at 2 p.m., but you're the co-host if you still want the role. So.
Not today. Today? No, not today. Next Saturday, maybe. Oh, potentially, yeah. Hit me up after and tell me more about what is happening again exactly. I mean, in principle, I'm there, but fill me in after, and yeah.
I just fill people in, but basically what's going to happen is notice that that Crimea right now is the hottest topic in the history of Crimea.
Right.
So she would do her panel deep diving into the origins of Crimea and the origins of people from Crimea.
Oh, interesting.
And, Greeks.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, actually one thing I'll say too, it's funny. One of the reasons I enjoy being on panels is more putting on my legal hat and not necessarily the law. But when you get into these kind of discussions, it's really important to dumb things down. And I say for me. So I often enjoy being on these panels to kind of go, okay, stop a second. Could you maybe tell people what that is I would do this on my podcast all the time because my co-host would always say things assuming people knew. And I'm like, Cliff, tell people the history of elections in Ohio. Oh, well, okay. But so yeah, especially for history stuff, that's great. When's it going to happen? When is it?
Saturday, 2 p.m. EST because it's 9 p.m. her time.
I'm sorry. So Saturday, 2 p.m. Pacific time?
Eastern.
Oh, Eastern. Okay. Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern, next Saturday. And how do people find it? Although I'll show people again once we, how do people find it?
So it's now searchable and and the YouTube is there. If you look up
Yulia,
on YouTube, you should find it.
Okay. Oh, and sorry, folks, I keep forgetting. You guys can't see. We're chatting with Yulia, who's Ukrainian American or Ukrainian?
Ukrainian, but Americanized.
Okay.
By 11.
Ukrainian American. Well, I wasn't sure if you ended up becoming a dual citizen or anything. I wasn't sure. Ukrainian Americanized blogger, or not blogger, but TikToker and everything else. But she's going to be hosting a panel next Saturday and following Saturdays as well with a Ukrainian history expert, which is great. So, and I'm going to participate in principle. That was the plan. And we have to work around this because my normal time is 2:00 Eastern with you guys. So we'll figure out what we do. Maybe I'll do an hour earlier or something. All right, cool.
And we'll figure out how to merge these things so all of us can participate.
Yeah. All right. All right. Let me get back to this. hit me up. I'm going to actually go out right after this with my dog because it's beautiful. But hit me up sometime the next day or two. I'm sure we can work it out. Yeah. I may be a little less. I may be yawning more during your thing than my own if I've already done this for an hour. But we'll see. All right. Okay. Okay. Good. Thank you. And as always, you hang up because I never know how to hang up these things. All right. Thanks, Julia. Bye-bye. Okay. Well, that'll be fun. Yeah, because the idea was, especially having a historian, I think is interesting. But I also, as I was saying, I like being on panels like this because I find sometimes, especially historians will kind of assume, or experts in general will assume that you know their expertise, and they don't explain some of the background with people like me, where I'm like, wait a minute, what is blah, blah, blah? Actually, well, when we had Julia on last time, it was that Kiev's Russia or Kiev's Rus or Rus Kiev or whatever it's called kind of thing, which I'm already forgetting what it was. In any case, ooh, my allergies today. All right, guys, back. So I'm sorry, Zero was asking, do I think Ukraine will get back all the lost land? I don't know. I think what's going to be hard is, yeah, thank you, Josie. The problem is doing two of these in a row. That's the only thing that's going to be hard. I can do this for an hour and a half with you guys, but another hour afterwards. Oh, thank you. You're right. I unplugged. Hang on. I unplugged my mic out of my iPad so we could hear Julia. One moment. There we go. Gotcha. Thank you for mentioning that, Big Hawk. So, yeah. So, can Ukraine get the land back? I think you're seeing a situation where Crimea is going to be the hard part, and Zelensky's already said that. I mean, Zelensky said something. It's funny. There have been a couple mixed messages on Crimea, but the other day Zelensky said something to the effect of, I forget how you want to put this, but bottom line is he mentioned Crimea. Yep, there you go, Kiev and Rus. He mentioned Crimea separately, and he said, you know, we've got to take into account. Basically, he said the loss of life and everything else that'll happen if we try to take it back, and how, you know, they'll have to kind of figure that out. Having said that, if Russia keeps losing this war, there also was a top aide, I believe, to Zelensky who said Ukraine's going to be in Crimea by the end of the year. So, you know, who knows? I mean, I think it depends how this goes. You know, the Russians keep losing, the Ukrainians keep advancing, and all of a sudden Ukraine says, you know what? We've beat them everywhere else. We're advancing into Crimea. And the Russians go, holy crap, right? Oh, yeah, cute. All right, sorry. Are there any? I'm like trying to find questions people threw up here on threw up. That's always funny to say that. Threw on here on YouTube, but I will pull up a TikTok instead. Hang on, guys. I don't think so. Turton Overlord says, do you think Russia will use nukes if they lose? I don't think so. I think the problem with Russia is, you know, if Russia were to lose Moscow, then I think they might use nuclear weapons, right? Then it might happen. But I just don't see this concept of, mind you, because look what lose means. Lose doesn't necessarily mean, there's the other thing. If Russia loses cities in Russia to Ukraine, then they might use nukes, right? But if Russia loses because, gosh, they don't get to annex eastern Ukraine. Gosh, the territory they stole from Ukraine in the south, Crimea, it looks like Russian forces are finally getting beaten. I don't think Russia has any moral authority, or whatever you want to call it, to use nukes. And I use moral authority on purpose. Thank you, is it Monty? I'm going to look at what your name is there. Sorry, Montel. I'm going to call you Montel. Mantle, maybe. They don't have the authority to say, because look at it this way. When I say moral authority, I mean, you know, Russia's going to lose one of its own cities. So, of course, Russia's going to freak out and then potentially do something awful, because literally Ukraine is about to annex Belgorod, Russia, right? I'm not saying it's okay for Russia to use nukes, but that's a situation where I could imagine them doing it. Where Russia might say, you know, the international community might be a little more accepting of Russia doing something radical if Russia's losing its own cities. Whereas going after the fact that Russia's getting pushed out of Crimea that belongs to Ukraine anyway, there's no way Russia would get away with it. So I still think they're gonna claim they're gonna use nukes and everything else, but I don't buy it. Okay, people are being bad. All right, you get them, Syndicate. Marion, my old chum, but probably a little younger than me, I suspect. Any more news on waning war support in Russia, economic problems, and how is Brittany? Brittany's trial, Brittany news was about a week and a half ago. Brittany Griner, who is the American basketball player, female, who was kidnapped by the Russians, basically, to use as God knows what, a bargaining chip, an embarrassment, who knows what. But they claimed she had drugs. The whole thing was crazy and clearly a lie. And her trial was postponed again, I want to say, at least, thank you, Brendy, for that. At least it was around 2 months at the time. I don't know if it was pushing it to the end of June or July, but there's no news on that. And the only news we had on that was about a week and a half ago or so that the U.S. declared officially that she was being detained illegally. In other words, that they concluded that she was not using drugs. She did not have drugs in her bag. And in fact, the Russians took her as a hostage. And it switched her case from consular affairs, where basically Americans who use drugs abroad like idiots and get arrested are dealt with, to the actual hostage division at the State Department, which was interesting, I thought. So it actually was a substantive procedural difference in terms of how they dealt with this. You know, the economic stuff, had you been watching the last several broadcasts, Marion, and I think you have because you've been commenting, you would have seen that I've had a number of sanctions updates. I don't want to go over them all now, but we did have a number of sanction updates showing that in the auto industry, not in the auto industry, in the aviation industry, there's a clear impacts of the sanctions now. Not as many planes flying, and they're really worried about having to cannibalize some of their planes to help make the other planes work, commercial planes. They're running out of buttons, of all things, buttons for clothing the Russians are running out of. What was the other? There was another not weird, but another thing that was on the list that they were having problems with, the shortages. I can't recall. And just the consumer prices are starting to go through the roof across the board in Russia. That inflation is going nuts, which is good, so to speak, if you're trying to punish them. Waning war support, that was another thing we've mentioned. Paper, that was it. You're right. Yep, Mimi says paper. It was paper to the degree where the banks, the Russian banks that would give you, a paper receipt when you do a transaction, they've shortened the length of the receipts in order to save paper now because they're having a paper shortage. And it was just kind of a weird observation, but interesting. And finally, the news on the war support, the stories coming out on that have been more stories of soldiers themselves refusing to follow orders. We had, was it 115 or so of the Rosavgardia troops that are kind of like National Guard in eastern Ukraine that we now have confirmation refused to be sent to Ukraine. They were fired. They appealed, and then the court said they lost their appeal and published it online. The court did, which is how we know it was true, because the actual court opinion was published online, which is kind of interesting too, because it's the kind of thing the Kremlin would not be happy with, but the local court published it anyway. So we do know that some people are actually refusing to go. We also know that they're, what else I was going to say? Not the age limit. The age limit thing is about lacking men. It's not really about support. There have been a few more protests. I don't recall other stuff regarding waning support. I'm not sure I've got anything else on waning support. I don't know if anybody else does. International paper. I don't know. Are you being funny about international? You mean international paper or international paper? Like sort of international, I don't know what. like big pharma has big paper pulled out. I don't know. I mean, yeah, the MS, certainly the media is heading waning coverage, but that's because you can only cover the stuff for so long. And in America, for example, we've got we had this mass shooting, which obviously is going to compete with, it's not even going to compete with coverage. Yep, there have been more, yep, Cassie's correct. There's been more Molotov cocktailing of recruitment centers around the country. You know, that's been interesting. I'm trying to think like what else here, if anything else. I don't know. That's all I got, Marion. 'Tis all I've got. Boom. Let me grab another TikTok question for you guys. Hang on. Oops. I'm not even sure what the likes are at the top. The 88,000. Somebody mentioned the 88,000 likes, but I don't even know what that is. Is that likes overall on my profile, or I don't even know what that's for. But I'm glad it's high. Whatever it's for, baby shoe. Hang on. Q&A. Hang on here. I mean, I think it's great. You know, Fu Isaac asks my take on Finland and Sweden joining NATO. I mean, obviously, you know, as an American, I think it's great. I think it's going to be highly beneficial to NATO overall. They're two really strong militaries and strong democracies, and culturally are already tied in closely with the West, but also with NATO. You know, I believe both countries. Sweden certainly was. I think Finland too. Wasn't Finland as well operating with NATO, like doing, you know, kind of joint things? So that's good. Certainly Sweden. Also, it's going to piss Russia off, but too bad. You know, I mean, Putin screwed up. This does not help Putin. This is all the more reason Putin needs a win out of Ukraine, because Ukraine's bad enough that Putin went in there and basically lost at this point, or it looks like he's losing at this point, that he got some land, he didn't get all the land. You've got the enormous number of Russian casualties, equal to or more than Afghanistan, and Afghanistan went on for 10 years. This has only been going on for 3 months. And then you've got the fact that NATO's expanding, and is expanding to two key countries that NATO has wanted forever, and they're countries that are pretty much on Russia's border. Sweden isn't, but just barely. I mean, Sweden's just this far away from Russia's border, and Finland not only is on Russia's border, but, and I keep forgetting, is it 1,500 kilometers, 1,200 kilometers? But it's about, you know, over 1,000 miles of border practically that Finland's got with Russia. And now that's going to be NATO border. NATO is going to double its border with Russia. That's a disaster for Russia. I mean, it's not a disaster in terms of security because we're never going to attack. But from their perspective, it's a crazy disaster. Oop, thank you for that. Who was that? Sorry, I'm just seeing who that was that sent that. Cammy, thank you for the pearl. That was sweet of you. 835 miles. Okay, there you go. Oh, so it was 1,200. Okay, 1,350 kilometers, I'm told, or 1,274, more or less. Let's say 12 to 1,300 kilometers and a little over 800 miles. Let's say that. So no, I'm ecstatic, but I think it's what is interesting to me as a political science, foreign policy, political guy is just what a disaster that is for Putin. I mean, really bad. All right. For current live, so 88,000 likes for that's for the current live. Oh, I did not know that. Oh, that's for the current live. Oh, and we did get almost. Come on, guys, 99.1 thousand for the current live. Let's go on my TikTok. I guess you keep hitting a like button. I had no idea. Look what I'm learning. There we go, 100,000. Thank you, people. I had no idea. Means people keep tapping the screen on TikTok to get the stream more out there. I did not know that. Oh, the hearts are likes. I never knew that. I have never used the stupid hearts when I go to somebody else's live because I never knew what they were. I didn't know. All right, thank you guys. Actually, that helps though, because it helps you with the FYP page. That's what I figured. Yeah. It helps actually promote it more on TikTok, and you never know. One hopes that maybe it also sends a message to TikTok that people like this live. So not just promoting it now, but maybe next time. That's funny though. As soon as somebody said 88,000, it like jumped to 99. Oops, dropping my inhaler. Thank you for that, guys. That makes me feel good. I had no idea. I thought it was like liking my profile or something. My normal day job is actually doing this lately. You can, if you want, I mean, you can read much more about the kind of work I've done in my TikTok profile. There's a link that says beacons, and actually I could even show you guys what it is, but I think somebody might have it. On TikTok, that's my link. But if anybody has the actual link to share, but there's a link that says beacons in my TikTok profile. And when you click and go through, look down a little bit and you'll see my LinkedIn profile. You can see all the stuff I've done. But basically, I have always done political work with the internet. I mean, not always, but for the last 25 years practically. Well, no, more than 25 years. I've done political work with the internet. And it has certainly segued into social media since social media came on board. It started more with email, with websites and things like that. But I have always done a combination of media, activism, politics, domestic and international, and using the internet to inform people, to engage them, to enrage them, and to push them to make a difference. So again, not necessarily very different than what I've done here. I've done podcasts before. My podcast did okay. This has done way better than my podcast. And since this started, thank you, Flower Lady, it's been doing so well that I just decided to keep doing it. And Ukraine mattered to me. I'm a media producer. I'm writing that down. Thank you, Ramza. So I'm a media producer. I never know what to call myself. Literally, people ask me at parties and things like, what do you do? And I'm like, I've got a TikTok. I even tell you guys, I'm like, because they kind of look at you and go, huh? I told you the first time my nephew, my older nephew is great at this stuff. My younger nephew, who's good at it. But last Thanksgiving, and I don't know if my other nephew had told him I was doing a lot of stuff on TikTok or something. Thank you, Len and Tanya, both. Appreciate that. But my younger nephew, who's like 30 now, says something like, Uncle John, this whole TikTok thing, I just think you're too old for it. I don't think it's going to work. And I was like, well, Andreas, I've got 220,000 followers. He goes, okay, never mind. But it's just worked so well that I figured let's keep trying to make it work. But I'm still kind of juggling. We'll go back to the questions. And thank you for the hat, Tanya. I'm still kind of juggling how to make this affordable, meaning to do this in a way that generates revenue that I can pay my bills. Thank you, Len. Which matters because when you're my age and you live in Washington, D.C., my bills are $55. I'll just tell you guys, I don't talk about money as far as money goes, but my bills are $5,500 a month between my healthcare and my mortgage and everything else. It's between $5,000 and $6,000 a month, and that's what I got to pay. So you've got to, when you live in a town like DC, when you're of a certain age that you own a home, and it's a 1-bedroom apartment, it's not fancy in that regard. You need to make money. And this is an ongoing thing, I think, for all creators, for all media producers, as you said. Thanks, Cami. You've got to figure out how do you do this stuff in a way that's sustainable. And I've never quite figured that out. I've always done it in a way that's been just my activism. I just get involved. I'll do something for months for free. It makes a difference, but I never get money. So I have to end up dropping it in the end. And, anyway, DC is just an expensive place. Like I said, DC is, but also when you work on your own, it's your health insurance in this country. So my health insurance, I'm still an advocate. Exactly. I still do that stuff too. Sure. Because I had student loans. See, I get the whole student loan issue. I don't want to get into totally here, but because I had massive student loans and I paid off my student loans for 15 years, I didn't buy a place because I was paying the equivalent of my rent in student loan payments. I had $60,000 in student loans. It cost me $120,000 to pay them off. And therefore I didn't buy a place until I was 45 years old because I couldn't afford it before then because my loans were eating up everything, So it sucks, but no, Washington is pretty sure Washington is the third most expensive city in the States. San Francisco and New York kind of compete with each other. Thank you, Melissa. I always feel bad talking about this like I'm begging for money, but thank you. It's fun. I think it's a Midwestern thing where we kind of don't like talking about money. It's a weird, it's kind of a funny thing. DC or New York? Oh, no, New York is more expensive for sure. No. New York and San Francisco jostle maybe for more expensive, hard to say, but DC is clearly number 3. Housing here, as I said, like I'm trying to think by square foot now. I'm not even sure because other cities are catching up. But DC is probably Washington D.C. Maybe $650 a square foot. Maybe New York clearly double that. You know. It cost him a cup of ramen. Thank you, Wendy. I know I should get. I like ramen though. I used to make ramen noodles. Right, we're already getting into the casual part of our show. I might as well try to answer another question first, and then we'll talk about the casual stuff. Sorry, I'll pull up another question here. But in any case, I'm working on it. I'm considering doing a Discord. I'm considering a lot of things that might be ways of adding more value. And also doing things that maybe are some subscription, who knows, but, see if we can keep doing it. Because I want to keep doing this stuff. This has been great. I mean, I love this. And I love that even we've been able to raise money for causes and things like that to help Ukraine. It's been really fun. And I say fun because I mean that, though. It's fun when you make stuff work, Thank you, call name. I like the bright red. That's kind of funky. I'm sure that's random, but it's kind of cool. I've always liked red. So the likes, very cool on the like thing. I haven't been paying attention. I should see in the future how the likes work. I'll have to make sure I ask you guys more in the future to actually like it on TikTok. Is Russia's army getting worse? Interesting question on that. Oh, thank you. I didn't even see those lights there. It's for a second there, Mad. Thank you, Mad. One thing that people have been saying about Russia's military is that it's not that Russia's equipment sucks. Russia has good military equipment, but they haven't been keeping it very good. So like the trucks and things, they've been doing such a bad job. Oh, hey, Jay. They've been doing such a bad job keeping the tires up to date, for example, that the tires are breaking and the trucks are just breaking down and then, making convoys break down and everything else, right? So it's not that the equipment is out of date itself. It's not like that Russia has really bad military equipment, but Russia has not kept its military equipment well protected or whatever you want to call that, right? The second thing is their troops suck, and that is true. The Russian military sucks at this point. They've got clearly, as we knew, a large number of I'm already forgetting. What did we call them? Not the draftees, conscripts, right? They've got a large number of conscripts who basically are people doing their military service who don't want to be there. The training isn't much that they've had. The conscripts, exactly, Jay. They've the training itself is kind of effed up. Not the training, the whole way the system works. Russia apparently has historically had problems with logistics, which means the whole concept of logistics is you invade a country 100 miles in and you take all the land. Well, how do your troops at the front get food? How do they get water? How do they get gasoline and diesel for their tanks and trucks? How do they get more ammunition? Because they're running out of ammunition. They don't necessarily get it from the people they're attacking because they have different guns and different tanks and everything or whatever, right? So that's all logistics. You've got to have this supply line that keeps going as you go deeper in, and the supply line gets longer. The Russians suck at it, and apparently they've always sucked at it, and they still suck at it. There's also a problem with like the top-down command structure. Apparently, and this gets a little over my head in terms of military stuff, but we empower people further down in the military to make decisions. There's a whole issue here of, non-coms or whatever. And again, I'm not really sure how all of that works, whatever. But there's a whole issue of they don't even have a certain class that we have that are sort of empowered to do stuff. But also, if like the top people, if the people on the ground in the field get separated, they're screwed. I mean, if they get, meaning your unit gets separated from everybody else, they're screwed because they're literally like drones. You tell them to attack and they attack, and they just like robots, they attack. And it doesn't matter if the attack is becoming a really stupid idea and maybe you should do something else. They were told to do this, that's what they're going to do. And that's what the Russians do. So and I think you're going to see a lot more analysis about this as time goes on, but Russia's big problem isn't that Russia has crappy equipment. It's that it has a crappy military structure and crappy recruits, like not people who aren't very good at this. And the whole issue, morale's a problem. And you've got the whole issue of also war crimes and everything else, which goes to training. The whole war crimes issue, a lot of people say, isn't just because Russia's kind of a violent culture, but it's also, this is this is what these guys are like, you know? I mean, you know? Laura, I did see your request. The thing is, I'm not really publishing stuff anymore on my site. It's very rare, so that's why I didn't really get back to you on it. Sorry. But I'm just not really publishing stuff. All right, you know what? I'm going to call it quits on the questions because I've got about 10 minutes before my friend comes over and we do a nice saunterly, if that's a word, walk with my dog Sasha. And this way we've got about 10 minutes. We can just hang out and chat amongst ourselves, which we like to do at the very end of our chats anyway. So let's chat. This is where we can chat about stuff that isn't related to politics. Well, we can chat about politics, but I try to have this be the detox so we can kind of, you know, get stuff a little less, a little less, I don't know what. Hey, Utah. A little less uptight than discussing Ukraine all the time. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, yeah, there was one. Mikola says their tires on the military vehicles go back to the USSR. There was one thread on Twitter of somebody I respect who was checking just that and basically found that one of the tires, when you zoomed in, said made, and this is on a current Russian military vehicle, says made in the USSR. Now, the issue there, though, is that doesn't mean it's 32 years old. It is possible, and not just possible, when the USSR dissolved in 1991, it's not like they immediately changed all the tire plants and said, oh, the mark that goes on the tire can no longer say USSR. Let's spend millions of rubles or dollars or whatever changing all the tire stamps. Well, these guys were cheapskates in a poor country. They left the stamp on there for a number of years. The problem becomes that was 30 years ago. And what the experts were saying, okay, generously, the tire may not be 30 years old. Is it 20 years old? Probably. What's the lifespan of the tire? 5 or 6 years. Even the Russian military manuals said the tires had a 6-year lifespan, and these guys are using this tire 20 years later on their vehicles. So yeah, part of the problem is they're using old tires. Part of the problem is they don't rotate the tires. They also don't, there's a whole issue, which I didn't even think about, but in military vehicles, these things can be sitting. Hey, John Sarge, you're a little late. We got a couple minutes to go. On military vehicles, because these things could be sitting for a year or two in one position, you've got to like rotate the cars. So one side of the car isn't getting all of the, yep, we're almost at 200,000 likes. Let's go, guys. One side of the car isn't getting the sun and the other side isn't, or one is, one isn't. Those tires wear down more quickly. So you keep rotating so it's even all around. Also, you put the cars next to each other so that their shade blocks the car next to them so its tires don't get damaged. And there's all sorts of things you do if you have a smart military that the Russians don't do, that we do. So yeah, the tire thing is absolutely fascinating when you sort of get into the whole thing. Anyway, like I said, we're just hanging now for the last little bit. Oh, recap. Yeah, let me read the recap. I did not do the recap. Usually we save the recap for this time anyway, so hang on. So the recap of the news today is Severodonetsk, which is the town that the Russians are trying to take in the east. The quick update on that is the Russians are putting a lot of manpower and machinery into taking the town, and the experts say it may not be worth it. It probably isn't worth it, that the Russians are not going to get, they're going to spend more taking it than they're going to get by obtaining it. Secondly, we went through a whole much longer analysis on how the Russian combat intensity has dropped over the last week, and it is probably a sign, as we were just talking about, that the Russians are running out of vehicles. And as a result, they had planned to circle the town of Severodonetsk and have a siege. This is this town they've been going after in the east you keep hearing about. And instead now they're going straight in. They're having to attack the town straight on. And it's crazy. It's a little bit suicidal, but they're doing it, people think, because they just don't have the vehicles anymore to encircle the town. Very interesting. Yep, we hit 200,000. Thank you, guys. The France's former ambassador to the United States seemed to imply in a tweet that Ukraine had already lost and should be willing to give up land. A lot of us disagree. We then get into a discussion on whether land for peace and the concept of Ukraine would even work. I don't think it would in terms of appeasing Putin. I think he'd be back for more. Talked about Russia seizing 2 Turkish fishing boats, which is kind of interesting, but they stole all the fish, which to me was interesting because to me it once again sounded like Russia's in trouble. You know, they're literally having to steal fish. Come on, guys. What do you do? Think about it too. Like, what do you do with like several tons of fish? I mean, it's not the kind of thing you take just for the fun of it. I think you take it because your troops are starving and you need several tons of fish because you got nothing else to give them. Poland is sending 18 Crab self-propelled howitzers to Ukraine. These shoot farther than what the Russians have, which is great news. Die Welt, a German publication that is quite august, a very good publication, been around for decades now, reported last night that despite promises, the German government has not delivered. I'm doing a double negative. Hasn't delivered nearly any of the weapons to Ukraine it promised over the last 9 weeks. Very bad. Russia is potentially considering cutting off food and water to 1 million Syrians in an effort to, blackmail the West, basically saying we're going to let the Syrians die unless you cut back on the sanctions or whatever. And the British tabloids are convinced that Putin is either dead or dying and is using a body double at all the events he's at, which kind of made me chuckle. And yes, Mikola is mentioning that Kalush Orchestra, which of course won the Eurovision Song Contest, is auctioning off their Eurovision trophy and the signature pink hat that the band leader wears during his performances for not for charity, they're for Ukraine. I think for the Ukrainian military, maybe even they're doing it. I think that's what I read. But yes, I had read that and seen that. Anyway, what else? We got a couple more minutes, guys, and then Damien's calling. I'm even gonna unmute my phone now, so when Damien calls, I will be able to buzz him up. Boom. But yes, it's beautiful out today, so hopefully we'll be. Do not disturb. I shouldn't say do not disturb. There we go. My do not disturb is off. Excellent. What else? A golden blue. I know. Well, Sasha can't wear a vest because it's 80 degrees out and she'll melt. But I agree. Ukraine dog wear would be very cool. And it's a brilliant idea. It's an absolutely brilliant idea. I like that a lot. But again, I would not put that on my dog right now. That would be like fall wear. Mom is good. Talked to her yesterday. Thank you, Ronbo. I appreciate it. What else? Oh yeah, somebody asked what I put on my hair. It's funny. I make my own hair gel. Oh, okay. My friend Damien's nearby. All righty. He's going to be here in about 5 minutes. But yes, I actually make my own hair gel because my hair is so goofy, but I just get beeswax and mineral oil and melt it and kind of get the right consistency, which is hard to figure out. It ends up being a little wet-ish looking, but it keeps it kind of curly and wavy, and I like it anyway. And it changes throughout the day. Like right now, I had done it before I came on. Like in a couple hours, it absorbs more and gets wavier. Anyway, somebody asked, and since we're in the not politics section of the show, I figured I'd answer. Tomorrow, shoot, I forgot to tell you. So tomorrow, much to the chagrin of the Europeans, I'm going to switch to 7 p.m. Eastern for a while and just see how it goes, okay? I'm still trying to solidify the time slot. Don't get mad at me, but I'm still trying to solidify the time slot. We've done 6 p.m. Eastern for about 5 weeks now. I had to shift to that time when I was in Chicago, and we kept it for another week when I was back. I'd like to try 7 and just kind of see how it goes. Because I'm still, unfortunately, juggling you guys, and I apologize, but I'm juggling the Europeans and the Americans. And it's kind of, it's hard to figure a time. On the weekends, it's easy because we can do this all come together. But on the weekdays, it's very difficult because 6 p.m. Eastern is just a little too early for the Americans because even on the East Coast, it's questionable. I had a friend on the East Coast tell me the other day, he's like, 6 o'clock's a bit early after work for me to try to get on. And the rest of the country, it's 5, 4, and 3 o'clock, which is just too early. So I know it's late. I know it's 1 a.m. your time. I'm sorry. Oh, there's a Memorial Day concert in DC. I don't know what time it is. I always forget those things. I don't know. Tomorrow's supposed to be hot though. Tomorrow's Memorial Day, big holiday here in the States. It's a holiday that people are anyway, big holiday. People are off of work, I was going to say. So, yeah, so I'm going to try. Forgive me. I know it works for the UK. I don't mean to cut off the rest of you, but let's try it at least for a week or two max, and I can see how it goes. I don't know if it'll make any difference in terms of the numbers, because honestly, I've kind of had a sense it didn't matter in terms of how many people show up, meaning, the people I lose are pretty much equal to the people I gain by shifting the time, but I'm just still trying to figure out what works here. So, I can't do that without giving it a week or two. Anyway, so I apologize, but let's just try it. We're going to do 7 p.m. Eastern. Our weekends will still be at times that always work, which is good. And eventually I want to pick a permanent time so it doesn't confuse the heck out of people. All right, guys, my friend Damien is going to be here momentarily, so I am going to sign off. Good to see you all. As I said, tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern or 1 a.m. Paris time. And I, again, apologize for being late, but not being late. Being late today, but also being late tomorrow, so to speak. Let's see 7:30. Let's see 7 o'clock first. 7 Eastern, 7 New York time, and we'll see from there. And again, if it's a total disaster, we'll go back. It's not like we can't change. But all right, guys. Goodbye. Goodbye, you all. Like I said, Damien's going to be at the door. I can't even tell you. It's going to be at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Oh, Sasha wants to go on the balcony. All right. 7 p.m. New York City time. You got to figure out what time that is where you live. 1900 hours New York City time. All right. Goodbye, YouTube.